That's murder, Mom. If Caleb finds out, he'll ruin us.
What does that mean?
Social media would eat him alive, and court would bury him. One question at a time, darling.
You should prepare yourself for the worst.
Lily ran a hand through her hair, her frustration building. She muttered to herself.
This is not how it was supposed to go.
She quickly grabbed her phone and called her mom. The phone rang once before her mom picked up.
How did it go?
Emily asked, her voice full of expectation. Lily sighed deeply.
The plan was a total disaster. There's no way I'm not getting fired after the stunt I just pulled.
Emily laughed, unfazed.
Don't worry, sweetheart. I've got this under control. Go to the bathroom, splash some water on your face to make it look like you've been crying, then go outside and let everyone see you in that heartbroken state as you come home.
Still fuming, but now following her mom's instructions, Lily did exactly what she was told. She came back home, feeling like a mess. But when she stepped into the living room, she was shocked to find Caleb sitting on the couch. His posture was stiff, and he was fuming, his fists clenched tightly. His jaw was tight with fury, his eyes burning with something between anger and betrayal. Lily blinked, a little taken aback, and then looked at her mother, who was sitting calmly and smiling. Emily patted the space next to her on the couch.
Come sit down, darling,
she said, her voice smooth as silk. Lily sat down next to her mother, her eyes flicking nervously to Caleb. Caleb didn't look up. Instead, he was grinding his teeth, his hands shaking with barely contained rage. Lily swallowed hard, still processing the tension in the room. Emily, still staring straight ahead, turned to Lily with a smug smile.
Now that you're here, everything will be soon set in motion. Caleb will soon publicly propose to you, and the world will believe you two are courting.
She slid a contract across the table toward Caleb, a pen sitting neatly beside it. Lily's eyes widened as she watched Emily speak with chilling calmness.
Caleb, you know what's at stake here.
Caleb glared at her for a long, tense moment. Then, without saying a word, he grabbed the pen with a clenched fist and signed the contract. His movements were quick but filled with frustration, as though every stroke of the pen was a battle he was losing. Once he was done, he slammed the pen down, his chest rising and falling with quick, angry breaths. Without a word, Caleb stood up and stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him. Lily watched him leave, stunned, her mouth hanging open. She turned to her mother, eyes wide with shock.
What did you do? How did you make him sign that? What exactly did he just sign?
She exclaimed, her voice shaking with confusion and disbelief. Emily simply kept her cool, flipping through the pages of the contract with a smirk.
One question at a time, darling,
she said, unfazed by her daughter's panic. Lily couldn't tear her eyes away from the papers in her mother's hands.
What did you just get us into?
Emily leaned back, her smirk unwavering.
Let me start by answering what I made him sign. It's a contract to ensure that he marries you.
Lily blinked, her jaw nearly hitting the floor.
How? What kind of...
Emily chuckled, cutting her off.
Do you want him or not? Of course I do,
Lily exclaimed, then gestured wildly toward the door.
But did you see his face? He looked angry enough to stab me, bury the evidence and whistle his way home.
Emily waved her off with a serene smile.
Oh, darling, he wouldn't dare. Not when his mother's life is at stake. Excuse me, what?
Lily's voice shot up an octave.
I may have hired someone to, let's say, poison her. Just a little.
Emily replied, her tone as light as if she were discussing a new cookie recipe. Lily clapped her hands over her mouth, muffling her gasp.
You poisoned his mother? This is insane. Relax, she's not dead. It's a mild poison, just enough to cause a heart condition. Slow acting, completely reversible with the antidote, of course.
Emily assured her with a dismissive wave. Lily shot to her feet, nearly knocking over the coffee table.
That's murder, Mom. If Caleb finds out, he'll ruin us. He's rich, powerful, and oh my gosh, this could finish us.
Emily nodded thoughtfully, as though Lily had just pointed out a mildly inconvenient typo.
Yes, he could try, but he won't. Not with the scene you left behind.
Lily squinted.
Scene? What scene?
The one where you cried your eyes out in public with his jacket. Everyone saw him run out of there. If you came out looking teary and traumatized, the narrative practically writes itself. People will think he took advantage of you. Social media would eat him alive, and court would bury him. So, when you called me, I called him over and simply added a bit of persuasion. Marry you or watch his life crumble.
Lily stared at her mother, slack-jawed for a moment, then slowly started to grin.
You're a genius.
Meanwhile, on the road, Caleb gripped his steering wheel, so hard his knuckles turned white. His jaw clenched, his mind racing as the rage simmered beneath the surface.
I trusted her.
He muttered, each word like venom on his tongue.
I thought she was decent. She's Hope's sister, for crying out loud.
His thoughts churned as he drove, the betrayal cutting deep. Every memory of Lily's smiles and laughter now felt like a cruel joke. As Caleb's car rolled up to the gate, he leaned on the horn. Once. Twice. Still nothing. With a groan of frustration, he laid on it a third time. Finally, the groggy gateman stumbled out, fumbling with the latch, and swung the gate open. The gateman pleaded, explaining how he only took a quick nap as he nearly tripped over his own feet. Caleb, still seething, closed his eyes and took a deep breath. What would Jesus do? He asked himself. Probably not slap the gateman into next week, no matter how tempting it was. He exhaled sharply, stepped out of the car, and strode past the man without a word, leaving him trembling in his wake. Inside the mansion, the cool air did little to ease Caleb's boiling temper. Mrs. Clark greeted him from the kitchen, sipping on a bottle of water.
Caleb, welcome back. How was the photo shoot?
Caleb forced a grin, lowering himself into the couch.
It was...
He stopped mid-sentence as Mrs. Clark began coughing. It started light but quickly escalated into a violent fit. Caleb bolted upright.
Mom? Are you okay?
She didn't answer. The coughing intensified, and before he could even reach her, she collapsed, the water bottle slipping from her hand and rolling across the floor. Caleb rushed to Mrs. Clark, his face drained of color as he knelt beside her.
Mom, wake up.
He called, gently shaking her, but there was no response. Panic clawed at his chest as he fumbled for his phone, his hands trembling. Dialing for an ambulance, he declared with the conviction of a man hanging on to faith by a thread.
You will live and not die. You will live to declare the glory of God, Mom. I'm not losing you.
As the operator guided him through what to do, he followed every instruction to the letter, his voice shaky but determined. With his free hand, he held Mrs. Clark close, whispering in tongues, his words a desperate melody in the tense silence of the room. When the ambulance finally arrived, Caleb barely waited for the paramedics to do their job before hopping into his car to follow them. He kept his grip tight on the steering wheel as he drove to the hospital. At the hospital, chaos erupted as the paramedics wheeled Mrs. Clark into the emergency room. Caleb paced in the hallway, his mind a swirling storm of worry, fear, and prayer as his shoes squeaked against the linoleum. Hours passed before a doctor emerged, his expression grim. Caleb rushed to him, his voice breaking.
How is she? Is she okay?
The doctor sighed.
She's been poisoned, but we don't know what type of toxin we're dealing with. Without identifying it, we can't administer the right treatment.
Caleb's chest tightened.
What does that mean?
He demanded, his voice shaking with a mixture of anger and fear. The doctor hesitated before saying,
If we can't figure it out within 3 days, you should prepare yourself for the worst.
The words hit Caleb like a freight train, and he stumbled back, gripping the wall for support. The room seemed to spin, his knees threatening to give out beneath him.